After having somewhat of a frustrating time with the Battlefield 2042 beta, I decided to go back to Battlefield 1, a game that I gave up on a long time ago. I had covered Battlefield 1 when it came out, but the DLC was so poorly spaced out that I couldn't keep myself interested in the game over the long term. Looking back at how the content was laid out compared to the previous game of Battlefield 4, I guess I shouldn't have been surprised that I had just quit after a few months in search of new games. The beauty of going back to a game 5 years after its inception is that you get to experience it completely, not half finished, not sort of kind of done, but complete. And this is especially important with this franchise as it relies heavily on DLC for new weapons, maps, modes, and more. Plus, you also get a game that has been ironed out in the areas of server stability, ping, and optimization, all things very important for a first-person shooter gamer. You can see how important time is to a first-person shooter just by looking at how Battlefield 4 panned out over the years, a game that started out horribly, only to become stable and full of content and just absolutely awesome. I hope the same will be true for the upcoming Battlefield 2042, a game that looks like it's going to need a lot of time and help if the beta is any indication. Now, mechanically speaking, I have a lot to say about Battlefield 1. From a position of movement mechanics, Battlefield 1 feels pretty good, existing as sort of a middle ground between all the games. It's weighty like the old Battlefield games, but it's still fast and fluid. After playing Battlefield 2042, I really appreciated how solid the game felt. If you've never gone back to an old Battlefield game, I think you'd be surprised how they feel. The old games feel very slow and sometimes pretty fumbly and awkward, even up to Battlefield 4. It's still my favorite Battlefield game, but the mechanics have certainly improved through the years to make the player movement feel more snappy, especially with the new dive mechanic. It's not on the level of Battlefield 5, which evolved movement mechanics much further and for my money provides the best player mechanics, at least from this position. Battlefield 5 offers jump slides, prone back crawling, smoother corner peeking, and crouch running, which was huge. The turn cap radius has also been unlocked to allow for smoother turning when sliding, and you can slide around corners and link slides to a crouch run pretty easily. It's nice. This makes the movement feel very stylish, yet because the game is still very hefty in feel, it doesn't make the movement feel weightless and slippy like it is in the Battlefield 2042 beta. And the best part is, it's very functional as you play. You can even fire while you jump, which is not possible in Battlefield 1. BF1 only allowed you to shoot when you were vaulting or falling and you couldn't ADS, so it was pretty situational. As a gamer who focuses primarily on mechanics in my analysis, I have to admit Battlefield 1 would have only benefited from these advances. There's a tremendous amount of destruction in Battlefield 1, and many maps are quite exposed. These mechanics wouldn't provide less exposure to these issues when running to objectives, but at least they offer better tools to deal with it, which is crucial considering there aren't enough trenches and tunnel systems in this game. Additional movement mechanics also have the potential to increase the skill gap while not disrupting the skill floor, meaning that with practice, a good player could keep getting better if they took advantage of these systems while not making it immediately harder for new players. Not to mention, tanks and planes in Battlefield 1 are very strong, so more movement options to get around them for planting dynamite or trying to dodge bombs would be better. Now, in terms of gunplay-specific mechanics, which are even more important, Battlefield 1 remains somewhat of a mixed bag. The developers opted for an intensive spread mechanic in Battlefield 1. When a gun is fired, there's a degree of randomness to where the bullets will land. The game engine uses a fancy equation to calculate the spread, however I can try to illustrate this by adding a circle around my reticule. When fired, bullets can land anywhere inside this circle. As you hold down the trigger, the circle gets wider and wider and wider, creating more randomness in the spread. Other actions like moving side to side or 80-80 spamming also increase the size of the circle dramatically, and this also goes when firing when suppressed. Which, by the way, is a mechanic I'm not very fond of because we are already penalized for being suppressed by having a black vignette overlaid on our screen, which disrupts our vision. What the spread does is create unpredictable recoil patterns, even on the first few shots. And don't confuse this with bullet drop, which is a separate system in which bullets are universally impacted by gravity when shooting at mid to long range. The spread system, I admit, is very hard to understand, but if you play Battlefield 1 with the knowledge in the back of your head, you can sort of feel how it affects your accuracy in a negative way. You are fundamentally at the mercy of RNG. You're not sure what direction the spread will take the bullets, so it's hard to control the randomness of it. Not all the time, but often enough to make it feel pretty terrible when it happens. This is why it's a lot better to fire in 5-round bursts in Battlefield 1, as the spread will reset to its original position if you correctly time the next set of rounds. DICE took note of this for Battlefield 5, in which they eliminated the random bullet deviation, instead introducing predetermined recoil patterns in addition to the base recoil of the gun. patterns, not paths. The directional patterns will more or less always be the same, but the path to get there will have some slight variance to it, which is now built into the recoil of the gun itself, and that's the big difference. I will admit on paper this makes for a slightly more predictable system as it makes it easier to account for it, but chances are random players won't even notice it. They'll just wonder why it's a little bit easier to not miss in Battlefield 5 when you have your reticule in the right spot. And for the purposes of this video, I won't go into any more depth, it's just something small I wanted to note. During its full run, Battlefield 1 released 4 rather large DLCs after it came out, most of which I didn't get to experience because I quit the game early, but they fixed one of its principal flaws, the small map pool and the lack of content and game modes. There were 17 maps added with the DLC, which is almost twice as many as the game launched with. This is one of the main reasons I had more fun playing this game in 2021, as many of them were quite well designed and drop-dead gorgeous, especially those for the Operations game mode, which has quickly become my preferred way to play. The main reason Operations was introduced in Battlefield 1 was to centralize action and get players into combat faster, as the Conquest mode didn't always do that, and could become quite scattered despite the inherent freedom it gave the players. The map pool itself is fairly good, it's gotten a lot better, but some of them are a little bit too flat for my liking, and these are the ones that could have used more cover, verticality, and trenches. It wasn't particularly fun to go back to a map like Suez, because it showcased how these things can lead to bottleneck matches and traffic jam style gameplay. This infamous hill hugging the Charlie points almost always gives majority point control to the team holding it, which results in long standstills and cheesy prone gameplay. This is no doubt amplified when a good tank driver sits on the hill, which can make the experience pretty miserable if the teams aren't balanced. This would have easily been remedied by adding some scout towers, giving vision over the hill, or a tunnel system so that players could circumvent the death trap. Instead, they added more control points to the map, which didn't solve the issue. This year I played a lot of Escape from Tarkov, and for my money it has the most thoughtful and detailed map design of any shooter. The best thing they did was add the expanded tunnel system to the Reserve map. Reserve was very exposed, just like a lot of the vanilla maps for Battlefield 1. So it was a really nice addition, and it really transformed Reserve into one of the best maps, because it's really dynamic. Battlefield has higher fidelity, severe weather effects, more players, and destruction, so it's probably not possible to have a lifelike bunker system like D2 in every map, but it's an example of how you could deal with flat maps, exposure, and dead space. The DLC maps didn't always do this, but as time went on, they did make a better effort. More trenches in Verdun Heights, wrapping control point tug-of-wars with Heligal and Bite, more density in Soissons, and more varied topography with Cape Helles and some of the snow maps. So overall, while Battlefield 1 doesn't have the epicness of the Siege of Shanghai or Caspian Border, I think the maps they added provide a much more varied and better experience today. Sadly, with the slim pickings of servers, sometimes it's a little bit difficult to get the one you want, which can be said for the game modes as well. The DLC also addressed my number one complaints with Battlefield 1 from a gameplay perspective, which was that explosives were so abundant and out of control in the early days that it was almost comical. Nerfing grenade damage, range, and resupply kits to an acceptable level helps create that breathing room running gunners need, as not all of us want to spawn in and immediately die to 5 anti-tank grenades. Now thank God they're much less effective towards general infantry combat, especially the gas grenade, which now acts as the strategic disruption rush tool that it should have been. These simple changes just go to show how tweaking a few numbers behind the scenes can make a drastic difference for players. Not every gameplay system has to be burned to the ground or retooled from scratch to have a major impact on playability. Sometimes you just need to tweak a few things in the back burner. Personally, I prefer the length of time needed to pull out and throw grenades and use gadgets, as was displayed in Battlefield 2042's beta, which carried far more penalties. This keeps the action on the gunplay because there is some inherent risk to using these things. This solves the inherent problem Battlefield 1 has of players simply throwing all of their explosives immediately before charging into combat, since it's so fast to do so. Again, Battlefield's primary focus should be on the shooting, gadgets only being used situationally. Battlefield 1 makes gadget use a little bit easier and faster than I'd like, but thankfully the nerfs make it much more tolerable to play against today. The idea of Behemoths was kind of smart on paper, but the execution is simply ass backwards, and it just does not fix the issue. Why punish the team doing well while rewarding the losing team? It's like giving presents on Christmas to bad boys and giving coal to the good ones. You have to figure out a different system so that well-intentioned players are not penalized for doing something they're supposed to be doing. And sadly, they don't even fix the issue of balance. They only postpone it because the Behemoths only act as a catch-up mechanic. They don't actually teach people to be better players. We're just teaching them that it's okay to lose because, well, hey, you'll get a train eventually. I can empathize being on a losing team, believe me, I know there needs to be balance, but that is typically served for server-side support via team management systems. Catch-up mechanics should be a last resort, especially when the implementation feels completely unfair. Elite class pickups and Behemoths are fun ideas on paper, but they have no place in a competitive Battlefield game. All it really is a way to balance the game without really balancing it. What is better in Battlefield 1 though is the distinct feeling of classes and individuality. In my time with the Battlefield 2042 beta, the absolute worst thing DICE did was add Specialists to this game. Specialists removed the most important feature to the Battlefield franchise, the feeling that you're part of a team, able to do some stuff very well and other things not so well. You had to rely on your squad and your team as you specialized in various things that others didn't have access to. This made your squad feel unique because you could handle different challenges. Most importantly though, it made you feel unique. Don't you want to feel unique in a Battlefield game? The universal equipment setup and the removal of classes removes this entirely, letting players be the jack of all trades in a series that has thrived in the opposite. What a fucking tragedy. The fact that they're calling them specialists is the biggest irony I've ever heard in my life. Battlefield 1 really feels like playing a piece inside a bigger war. Only a piece and nothing more, which is the point and that's how it should be. To get something, you have to give up something, and I think that is the way it should always be. People talk a lot about the ways BF1 was a step down from BF4 with the new vehicle spawning and medic revive systems, but the more specialized classes and lack of universal weapons is one of the welcome improvements in this game for sure. But the most important thing Battlefield 1 really nailed is the general atmosphere and immersion of the game. Battlefield 1 displays the haunting, scary, and gritty reality of war that other games have not been able to. It is the single most immersive first-person shooter to date. It is an incredible experience to play this game in 4K with the HUD disabled. It's absolutely engrossing and something I didn't appreciate the first time I played it. And once I disabled it, I really never went back. Even though I was handicapping myself, I found the experience so gripping that I could never go back. And if they added in a hardcore no HUD server with severe weather and rain, it would be the ultimate Battlefield 1 experience for me. Going back to Battlefield 1 today was a pretty amazing experience. I felt a draw to the gritty, bleak atmosphere and the entire game was crawling with immersion. It had a hefty, solid gameplay system with the perfect time to kill. I would have loved it if the game embraced the time period better in the gameplay departments, more deliberate bolt action combat, less accuracy to the rifles, more weapon sway or fatigue effects, weapon jamming, or possibly a bleed mechanic. But it's not fair to judge a game for what we want from it. We should look to see what a game provides, and if it's good, and if it's bad, it's bad. Even for me, I struggle with this concept when analyzing games because inside we're all mini game designers with our own ideas, prejudices, and preferences, even though we might not admit it or even notice it. Releasing a high-quality game and sustaining a high-quality game are two entirely different things, and I really think DICE dropped the ball with the DLC schedule, making it even more difficult to come back to it. But when I did and gave it a more detailed look, I have to say I'm a true Battlefield 1 fan now. The early combined arms warfare, the epic battles, the wonderful audio and immersive graphics, they're a feast for the eyes and the ears. It's also just goddamn fun, which is the most important thing. Truth be told, there are less Battlefield moments in Battlefield 1 than there is in Battlefield 4. BF4 feels more dynamic, and there are certainly more things to do and more gadgets, tools, and weapons to shake things up. And those things do meaningfully change the flow of combat in ways that are very unpredictable, which can lead to more of those holy shit moments than you can find in Battlefield 1. However, the rest of the title remains exceptional at what it offers, even after all this time, especially if you're like me and hadn't played the new maps or modes for the last few DLCs. DICE did a phenomenal job with Operations, which is a mode I've really grown to love. This game mode feels like an all-out war, from the visuals to the cries to the yells and cheers spewing out from each soldier on the battlefield. It's a very immersive experience, visually no doubt, but more so the audio design as it gets you to feel like you're there in the game with your boots on the ground. It's still not my favorite Battlefield game, and it has many flaws, but if you're looking to scratch a Battlefield itch, you just might want to give this one another shot. Battlefield 1 is a game with a tremendous atmosphere, letting you truly feel the reality of battle in the most immersive way possible. It's certainly not the perfect Battlefield game, and it doesn't deliver on all of its promises, but it is still deserving of being called a great entry into the franchise. Now, before I wrap up today's video, I want to thank our friends Fabulous for sponsoring this video. Fabulous is the #1 self-care app to help you build better habits and achieve your goals. Whether it's fitness, motivation, professional development, or maybe just learning to relax and treat yourself better, Fabulous gives you a friendly and intuitive day planner to create routines that you can stick to. The app keeps track of your long-term goals by breaking them down into bite-sized pieces while providing coaching, self-guided challenges, and more. There's no shortcuts in life and no easy fixes. You gotta have a solid plan and the support to stick to it, and that's what Fabulous provides. I've personally been using the app lately to set good practices so I can get better sleep and to have better, more productive mornings. It's just nice to know that I have someone in my corner to keep me honest in this process, because that's really how you get results in life in whatever it is you're seeking. It's that consistency. So if you guys want to support our channel and check out a cool product at the same time, look no further than Fabulous. The first 100 people who click on the link in the description will get 25% off Fabulous Premiere. Hey guys, thanks for watching today's Battlefield retrospective. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I hope to see you soon for our next video.